On this quiet day in America, for voices that once shaped our culture have gone silent. Their stories rose from different corners of the nation, the hills of the Missouri Ozarks, the fairways of golf's grandest stages, the towering halls of architecture, and the shadowed memory of one of the darkest chapters in American history. Today, each chapter closes, their lives touched readers, athletes, students, and generations seeking justice. As we remember them, we honor the imprint they left on the nation, subtle, profound, and lasting. Tonight, quiet news from the Ozarks confirms the loss of a writer whose stories never left the hills he loved. Daniel Woodrell's passing on November 28, 2025, brought a stillness to the literary world. His voice had always risen from quiet places, old roads, small towns, and forgotten corners of the Missouri Ozarks. Now, that voice has faded, leaving readers holding on to the worlds he built with such care. News of his death spread gently but firmly, carried with the same weight that defined his work. He was 72. Woodrell was born in Springfield, Missouri, in 1953. The land around him shaped the way he listened, remembered, and eventually wrote. His childhood was filled with the stories of working families, rural struggle, and the sharp beauty of the Ozarks. These early memories later became the foundation of a writing style that critics struggled to name. At first, only years later would the world understand that he had created something entirely his own. He wrote his first novel while living far from home, yet even then, the Ozarks followed him. He once said in an interview, "You write what you can't escape," a line that readers now repeat with a bittersweet calm. His stories were never loud. They moved slowly, like fog rising over empty hills at dawn. But inside that quiet, he carried truth, harsh, tender, and unforgettable. By the mid-1990s, Woodrell had found the phrase that defined him, country noir. It fit his work almost perfectly. His 1996 novel Give Us a Kiss used the term for the first time. Reviewers picked it up, then readers began to see the shape of his contribution. He was showing a different America, rural yet vivid, wounded yet strong. Simple on the surface, but deeply human underneath. His breakout moment came with Winter's Bone. The novel received strong praise for its sharp, haunting portrayal of a young woman searching for her missing father in the harsh landscape of the Ozarks. It was later adapted into a film that earned multiple Academy Award nominations. Even then, Woodrell's reaction remained calm and quiet. A friend recalled him saying, "I'm glad people heard the story. That's all that matters." That modest line has been shared again in tributes after his passing. Throughout his career, he wrote 9 novels and 1 short story collection. Each carried his signature tone, spare language, deep characters, and a sense of place that felt almost alive. Readers often said his stories felt like walking into someone else's memories. Critics agreed. One literary review described him as a novelist who can say more in 1 page than most writers say in 10. That line returned this week as publications remembered his life. Those who knew Woodrell personally described him as gentle and observant. He was the kind of person who listened more than he spoke. A former student wrote on social media, "He taught me that writing is less about showing off and more about telling the truth." The message gained thousands of shares as readers gathered online to share their grief. His passing has affected the writing community deeply. Authors who followed his work said he changed the way rural America was portrayed in fiction. Before him, the Ozarks were often overlooked or misunderstood. Through his stories, they became a landscape of struggle, loyalty, and strange beauty. He wrote about poverty without judgment, violence without sensationalism, and hope without making promises. His characters carried quiet courage, the kind found in everyday people. As news of his death settled, bookstores created small displays of his novels. In Missouri, some readers left flowers on library shelves next to his books. Others held reading circles in his honor, opening pages that carried his voice one more time. A librarian in West Plains said, "People didn't just read him. They recognized themselves in his stories." In the mid-body of his career, Woodrell's writing seemed to slow in quantity but deepen in tone. He focused on the details others might overlook: the way light falls on an old barn, the sound of gravel under a truck tire, the silence after a family argument. These small moments shaped his characters' lives, revealing what they feared, loved, or regretted. Many readers said this was what made him special. He found meaning in places others saw as empty. His later years were spent away from the spotlight. He preferred quiet living, close to home, recovering from injuries from a severe accident years earlier. Despite the pain that followed, he continued writing in shorter forms. Friends said he still kept notes on small scraps of paper. Every line mattered to him. Every idea felt like something worth exploring. On the day his death was confirmed, the Missouri Writers Guild released a statement describing him as a pillar of Ozark storytelling. They added, His work will continue to guide young writers who want to understand how to write with honesty. The tribute echoed through news outlets, each one reflecting on the mark he left behind. His influence also extended into cinema after the success of Winter's Bone. There was renewed interest in adaptation. Directors admired his ability to create scenes that felt cinematic without relying on heavy description. His dialogue was sparse, almost poetic, each sentence carried weight. Readers could feel the air of the Ozarks, smell the damp earth, and sense the danger that often lingered in the background as tributes continued. A close family member offered a simple and heartfelt statement. Daniel never wanted fame, he wanted the stories to matter, and they did. The quote spread across literary circles as a final reminder of his humility. Even now, fans revisit his novels to feel again the world he crafted. Some writers say they learned how to create tension from him, others say they learned restraint. Many learned compassion. His characters often lived difficult lives, yet he treated them with dignity. That empathy became the quiet center of his work. In looking back at his legacy, one truth remains clear. He changed the way regional stories are valued in American literature. He showed that powerful writing does not always come from grand cities or dramatic events. Sometimes it comes from a small house on a dirt road, or a tired voice telling a story at the end of the day. Sometimes it comes from the Ozarks. Today, readers honor the quiet strength he brought to literature. His books continue to appear in classrooms, reading lists, and personal shelves across the country. Young writers study his sentences, trying to understand how he balanced simplicity with emotional depth. Many never meet the standard he set, yet they keep trying, a tribute in itself. As this chapter of remembrance closes, the spirit of his work remains. His stories will continue to echo through the hills that raised him, carried by the readers who found themselves in his pages. Daniel Woodrell leaves behind a legacy of truth, courage, and deep humanity, a legacy rooted in the land he loved. His voice may be gone, but his stories will keep speaking for generations. Tonight, the golfing world grows quieter as news confirms the loss of a champion remembered as much for his smile as his swing. Frank "Fuzzy" Zoeller's passing on November 27, 2025, brought a wave of emotion across American sports. Fans, fellow golfers, and friends paused to honor a man who played the game with rare joy. He was a two-time major champion, but to many, he was simply the player who made golf feel warm, human, and fun. His death marked the end of a long era defined by personality as much as talent. Zoeller was born in 1951 in New Albany, Indiana. His early years were shaped by simple values, kindness, humor, and hard work. Those close to him often said he carried the energy of someone who loved life, not just the game he later mastered. As a young teenager, he found golf almost by accident. Yet the sport became a natural extension of his easygoing spirit. By the mid-1970s, Zoeller was ready for the world stage. He joined the PGA Tour with confidence, yet always kept his friendly nature. He played with a smile that viewers at home could feel. People loved that he joked with crowds, talked to caddies, and kept the pressure from turning into something heavy. In a sport often known for silence and focus, he brought laughter without losing focus. His breakthrough moment arrived in 1979, when he stunned the golfing world by winning the Masters in his very first appearance. It was a historic achievement. Only a handful of players have ever won the Masters on their first attempt, and Zoeller joined that rare group with calm grace. In interviews afterward, he shrugged off the pressure and said, "I just played my game." Those 5 simple words became a favorite quote among fans who admired his humility. The victory made him an instant star, yet he never changed. Zoeller stayed genuine, relaxed, and honest. Broadcasters loved covering his rounds because he made every hole feel like a shared moment. He made tough putts look effortless. He made the hardest sport look simple. Those who watched him play in the 1980s often remember the sound of the crowd. When he approached the green, there was excitement, mixed with comfort. People knew they were watching someone who truly loved what he was doing. Even years later, fans shared stories of short interactions that stayed with them. One man wrote on social media this week, "He shook my hand when I was a kid. He didn't have to. He just cared." That message was shared thousands of times. After news of Zoeller's death broke, his second major win, the 1980 U.S. Open at Winged Foot, solidified his place in golfing history. It was a tough tournament, marked by windy conditions and pressure that tested every player. Zoeller stayed calm through it all. His final round displayed courage, skill, and the steady rhythm he had mastered. When he lifted the trophy, he smiled, in a way fans instantly recognized, proud, grateful, but still humble. For much of his career, Zoeller was valued not just for his performance, but for the atmosphere he brought to the game. He was known for talking to the ball, joking with reporters, and keeping his head high through both good and bad days. He had flaws like anyone, but he faced challenges with honesty and grace, a fellow golfer said in a tribute. He played hard, he laughed harder, and he lifted the people around him. In the mid-body years of his career, Zoeller became a mentor to younger players. Many described him as a calming presence, someone who gave quiet advice in locker rooms and practice greens. He believed golf should stay enjoyable. He often reminded new players not to let the pressure take the joy away. Those simple lessons stayed with them. As the PGA Tour evolved, Zoeller remained a beloved figure. He continued to appear in events, charity tournaments, and television specials. His voice, warm and slightly raspy, became familiar to viewers watching commentary or interviews. He loved telling stories, especially about the early days when the game felt smaller and the players felt like family. Short paragraphs. In the later years of his life, Zoeller remained active despite health challenges. He stayed close to the sport and stayed connected to fans. For many, seeing him smile on course still brought comfort. He was known for saying, "Golf will humble you. That's why you stay grateful." After his passing, this line was repeated in tribute videos shared worldwide. The simple message carried deep meaning for those who admired his spirit. Tributes poured in from every corner of the golfing world. Players thanked him for his kindness. Fans thanked him for his joy. Broadcasters thanked him for the memories he helped create. Back into full narrative, his family released a brief but touching statement after his passing. Fuzzy lived his life with a full heart, they wrote. He loved the game, but he loved people even more. The words resonated with those who knew the man behind the victories. They revealed a truth many suspected, that his warmth at tournaments was the same warmth he brought home. Golf historians often describe Zoeller as a bridge between two eras of the sport. He carried the relaxed charm of the old days while competing with the skill needed for the game's modern age. His attitude helped soften golf's image for younger fans. His smile, his jokes, and his relaxed posture became part of the sport's cultural memory. Many fans say they started watching golf because of him. Others say they stayed because he made the game feel welcoming. Even casual viewers recognized his presence. When Zoeller was on screen, the broadcast felt lighter. He reminded people that sports are meant to be enjoyed, not endured. His impact stretched far beyond his trophies. Zoeller supported charities for children, veterans, and families facing hardship. He kept these efforts quiet and personal. One charity director shared this week, "He always said yes, that was fuzzy." Stories like this filled social media as people honored his life. At his peak, Zoeller's swing was described as smooth and natural. Analysts still study his rhythm today, pointing out how he balanced power with calm technique. Younger golfers sometimes mention him when discussing the players they grew up watching. To them, Zoeller represented a version of the sport that felt human and hopeful. As his final years grew quieter, Zoeller stepped back from public life but remained admired. Fans who met him in these later years often mention his gentle presence. A longtime supporter wrote, "He shook my hand like he remembered me. It didn't matter if it was true. What mattered was how he made people feel." He leaves behind a legacy of warmth and a reminder that greatness can be gentle. Though the fairways he once walked now feel different, the echoes of his spirit remain calm, kind, and forever smiling. Tonight, quiet reports from New York confirm the passing of an architect whose work shaped skylines, campuses, and the way America remembers itself. Robert A. M. Stern's death on November 27, 2025, brought a deep pause to the world of architecture. He was 86, and his influence stretched across decades, cities, and generations of students. News of his passing moved through design studios, universities, and public institutions with a quiet sense of gratitude. It marked the end of a career built not only on buildings, but on ideas that helped define American identity. Stern was known for blending classical inspiration with contemporary needs. His designs carried history into the present with balance and clarity, from grand libraries to modern residential towers. He believed that architecture should speak to its surroundings. Many called his style modern traditionalism, but Stern saw it simply as building with respect for time. He was born in Brooklyn in 1939. The city around him was changing fast, and even as a child, he noticed details others missed. He paid attention to doors, windows, roof lines, and the character of older neighborhoods. Those early impressions stayed with him. Years later, he said in a lecture, "Architecture begins with memory. Every place has a story." The quote was repeated widely in tribute posts. After his passing, Stern studied architecture at Columbia University, before earning his Master of Architecture at Yale. These two institutions shaped him deeply. Columbia grounded him in history. Yale pushed him toward exploration. The combination produced a designer who honored the past while welcoming the future. In the 1970s, Stern began gaining national attention. His work challenged trends that favored sharp minimalism and pure modernism. Instead, he argued that buildings should feel connected to the lives around them. Critics sometimes disagreed, but Stern never wavered. His vision was clear, confident, and deeply informed by history. His firm, Robert A. M. Stern Architects, known simply as RAMSA, became one of the most respected firms in the world. Their portfolio grew with campus centers, performing arts buildings, museums, corporate headquarters, and residential towers. Each project carried Stern's careful attention to detail. His buildings often featured strong forms, warm materials, and a sense of place that felt familiar even when new. One of Stern's most beloved achievements was his impact on American campuses. He designed major buildings for Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Duke, Stanford, and dozens more. Students walked through his halls without knowing they were shaped by one of the most influential architects of his generation. His campus work reflected balance, traditional forms softened by modern function. Shorter mid-body paragraphs. Stern's leadership at Yale School of Architecture became a defining chapter of his life. He served as dean for nearly 2 decades, from 1998 to 2016. During that time, he guided students with patience, discipline, and high expectations. Faculty members described him as focused and generous. Students says he combined strict critique with genuine support. He believed the next generation should build with purpose, not ego. A former student wrote this week, "He didn't teach us to draw. He taught us to think." The message spread widely among designers remembering their years under him. Many credited him with shaping not just their work, but their character. Back to full pacing, beyond academia. Stern also became a public figure in architecture through his books. He authored and edited sweeping volumes on American design, documenting entire eras with remarkable detail. His historical studies are still used as primary references across universities. The work showed his belief that architecture is not just built, it is remembered, recorded, and taught. He was also known for designing grand residential towers in New York and other major cities. These buildings brought together classical proportions with modern luxury. Many of them quickly became landmarks. Real estate analysts often pointed to his towers as evidence of a renewed interest in craftsmanship and architectural heritage. Even those who lived far from New York recognized the name. Robert A. M. Stern from headlines and documentary features. Colleagues often described him as thoughtful but firm. He believed deeply in his work, yet he also believed in the importance of listening. A longtime partner at RAMSA said in a tribute, "Bob didn't raise his voice. He raised his standards." That line, simple and heartfelt, captured his impact on the firm he built. As news of his passing spread, tributes arrived from architects across generations. Some praised his resistance to trends that chased novelty. Others praised his ability to stay rooted in history while creating new forms. Many simply thanked him for opening doors in studios and schools, and in the larger world of architectural thought. Despite his accomplishments, Stern remained grounded. He kept close ties with colleagues and students long after they moved on. Former employees often shared stories of brief conversations that stayed with them for years. It might have been a comment about a drawing, a question about a decision, or a gentle reminder to look again at a detail. Those moments reflected his belief that architecture lives in small choices as much as grand visions. Shorter mid-body paragraphs. In his later years, Stern continued to work actively. He reviewed plans, attended meetings, and offered guidance. Age never pulled him away from his devotion to the craft. Friend says he remained sharp and curious. He enjoyed conversations about changing skylines and new technologies. He believed architecture should evolve while honoring where it began. Even during periods of illness, he stayed connected to his firm. He encouraged younger partners to lead with confidence. His office lights often stayed on late into the evening. Back to full narrative. His work carried emotional weight because it often honored memory. He designed libraries that felt like guardians of stories. He designed museums that seemed to invite conversation. Even his residential buildings had a sense of familiarity, as if they were part of a city long before they rose from the ground. Because of this, Stern earned a reputation as an architect of continuity. He did not reject the present or romanticize the past. Instead, he brought them together. His approach steadied the profession at times when architecture seemed pulled toward extremes. After his death, Yale University released a statement saying, "Robert A. M. Stern shaped not only our campus, but our culture." The message captured his lasting presence in the world of education. At Columbia, several professors referenced his early work with deep admiration. One wrote, "He taught America how to see itself through its buildings." His impact also reached communities outside elite institutions. Public libraries he designed became gathering places for families. Civic buildings became anchors for neighborhoods. His work helped shape urban life in ways that felt personal, not distant. Fans of architectural documentaries often recognize Stern's calm voice. He appeared frequently in films about cities, historic neighborhoods, and the American landscape. His explanations were clear and gentle, crafted for everyday viewers. He believed architecture belonged to everyone, not just specialists. As tributes continue to arrive, one message appears again and again. Robert A. M. Stern created spaces where people could learn, gather, and breathe. His work welcomed people inside. It gave comfort, dignity, and a sense of place. As this chapter closes, his legacy rises like the skylines he helped shape. Robert A. M. Stern will be remembered as an architect, a teacher, a historian, and a guardian of American tradition. His ideas continue to guide young designers. His buildings continue to serve millions of people every day. He leaves behind not only structures of stone and steel, but a legacy of thought, a reminder that great architecture honors time, place, and the people who walk through it. His final gift is simple, spaces that feel like home, even when they stand in the heart of a city. A quiet sadness settles over Tulsa today, as news of Viola Fletcher's passing is confirmed. She was 111 years old, the oldest known survivor of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, a woman who carried one of the darkest memories in American history, and turned that memory into a lifelong call for truth. For many, she was simply Mother Fletcher. To others, she was a living witness who refused to let silence win. Her story begins not with fame or recognition, but with the desperate struggle of a young girl who saw her world destroyed before she could understand why. Those early memories followed her for more than a century, shaping her voice, her mission, and the quiet strength that people around the world came to admire. In Tulsa, community leaders describe the moment of her passing as the closing of a chapter that had stayed open far too long. One family member shared a simple message: "She told the truth so none of us would forget." The words reflected a lifetime of courage. Born in 1914, Viola Fletcher grew up in the prosperous Greenwood district of Tulsa, known then as Black Wall Street. It was a neighborhood filled with business owners, teachers, musicians, and families who believed in building something lasting. Greenwood was more than a place, it was a promise. But on the night of May 31, 1921, that promise was shattered. As a 7-year-old girl, she witnessed the chaos of the Tulsa Race Massacre. She remembered the smoke rising over her neighborhood. She remembered people running, shouting, calling for help. And she remembered the fear, a fear that stayed with her for decades. For most of her life, she lived quietly. She worked hard, raised her family, and carried her memories with a mix of pain and duty. Greenwood had been home, and its destruction had shaped every year that followed. But she did not remain silent. In 2021, at the age of 107, Viola Fletcher testified before the U.S. Congress. Her voice was soft, but steady, as she remembered the night that changed everything. "I still see black men being shot, black bodies lying in the street," she said. "I still smell smoke when I think about it." Her testimony moved millions. Lawmakers paused. News outlets around the world shared her words, and a new generation learned about a tragedy that many schools had ignored for decades. She had waited nearly a century to be heard, and when she finally spoke, the nation listened. Even as the years weighed on her, she carried herself with dignity. Community members say she never asked for fame, she only asked for truth. During her final public appearances, people often reached out to hold her hand. They thanked her for remembering when so many had forgotten. They thanked her for having the courage to speak when silence would have been easier. One historian wrote, "Her memory kept the story alive. Without her voice, the world might have never fully understood the cost of that night." In the last years of her life, she still traveled, still spoke, and still held on to the belief that justice was possible. Her strength inspired countless activists, scholars, and young people searching for identity and purpose. She once said, "I am not here for myself. I am here for the people who never got to speak." Those words, simple and steady, became her legacy. As news of her passing spread across social media, tributes poured in. A community leader in Tulsa wrote, "Mother Fletcher carried the weight of Greenwood on her shoulders so we could walk lighter. We owe her our remembrance." And a young activist shared, "She fought for 100 years just to be heard. We cannot let her voice fade." The middle years of her life were filled with quiet resilience. She worked as a domestic helper. She lived through segregation, through the civil rights movement, through wars and cultural shifts that reshaped the nation. She experienced a world changing around her. But the memory of Greenwood never softened. Her family says she often spoke about the small moments. She remembered the streetcar she rode as a child, the laughter of her brothers, the smell of food from neighborhood shops. These glimpses of normal life made the violence of 1921 even more painful. But they also made her testimony deeply human. She was not telling the story of a distant event. She was telling the story of her childhood. The Tulsa Race Massacre was one of the worst acts of racial violence in American history, but for decades, it remained hidden in public memory. Survivors were discouraged from speaking, records disappeared. Families were left with trauma instead of answers. Viola Fletcher helped break that silence. In the early 2000s, she began sharing her memories publicly. Community organizations invited her to speak. Students met her and listened carefully. Local newspapers captured her words. And slowly, the story of Greenwood returned to national focus. Each time she spoke, she carried a mix of sadness and determination. She did not raise her voice, she did not accuse with anger. Instead, she spoke like someone who had lived too long with grief and simply wanted the world to understand. Her courage helped push Tulsa toward acknowledgement, education, and reflection. In 2021, the city honored her on the centennial of the massacre. People stood in silence as she was escorted onto the stage. Many wiped tears from their eyes before she even began speaking. She represented the last living link to a tragedy that has shaped generations. Even after turning 110, she continued to advocate for survivors and descendants. She met political figures, shared her story in documentaries, and even traveled internationally. In 2023, she visited Ghana, where leaders welcomed her with ceremony and respect. She was celebrated as an elder whose memory connected continents. Visitors describe her as warm, gentle, and thoughtful. Her presence brought a sense of history into every room she entered. She spoke slowly, with intention, letting her words settle in the air before moving to the next thought. As she aged, her health naturally declined, but she stayed surrounded by family, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who looked up to her as both a matriarch and a living history teacher. They say she remained mentally sharp, often recalling details of Greenwood that many people born decades later had never learned. She did not want sympathy, she wanted justice. Justice, she once said, is when the truth is not forgotten. Her passing marks the end of an era, the loss of the last witness who saw Greenwood before it burned. But her story does not end here. Her voice continues in classrooms, documentaries, memorials, and the growing national conversation about racial violence and historical memory. For many, her life stands as a reminder that truth does not disappear simply because it is ignored. It waits. It waits for someone brave enough to speak it. Tulsa community members have already begun preparing tributes in her honor. Vigils, prayer circles, and gatherings of remembrance are expected in Greenwood and beyond. People will stand together in the very streets she walked as a child, honoring the life that helped revive a history once left in darkness. Her grandchildren say she took pride in seeing the truth come to light. They say she felt peace knowing young people were finally learning what happened in 1921. And they say she believed understanding the past was the only way to build a better future. Near the end of her life, she shared one more message with a local journalist: "Keep telling our story even when I'm gone." Those words have become a promise. Her legacy stretches beyond Tulsa, beyond Oklahoma, beyond the United States. She has become a global symbol of resilience, a reminder that even the smallest voice can carry across generations when it speaks for justice. Teachers now include her testimony in lessons. Filmmakers cite her as an essential figure in modern civil rights storytelling. Community leaders use her name as a symbol of courage when fighting for transparency and reform. She was not a politician, she was not a celebrity, she was a survivor who turned memory into purpose. And that purpose will continue tonight. Candles will glow across Tulsa. People will speak her name with respect. They will remember the young girl who survived the unimaginable, and the elder who carried that memory with grace. Her story now joins the timeless remembrance of the 4 remarkable lives honored in this documentary for individuals from different paths, yet connected by the impact they left on American memory. Their stories continue to guide, to teach, and to inspire.